Today, we begin a journey into the world's most dangerous homes, where reality becomes fragile and human survival turns into something extraordinary. Visit Santa Cruz delle Islote, a tiny artificial island in the Caribbean Sea, an incredible hanging town known as one of the most densely populated places on Earth. With an area of only 129,000 square feet, this island, about the size of a large soccer field, forces all living spaces to practically touch one another. Built from coral, stone, and sand by fishermen in the 19th century, the island stands in the ocean like a hanging structure perched right at the water's edge. Due to the extreme lack of land, families must share every square inch of common space, creating a tightly knit community within very limited boundaries. Today, hundreds of people from nearly 100 households live intermingled, turning the site into a dense, hanging urban maze in the middle of the sea. Each year, tens of thousands of tourists arrive from Cartagena, causing the human traffic on this small space to surge, making this hanging town intensely crowded during peak days. Kandavan village in the East Azerbaijan region of Iran defies all construction rules, as residents live inside those sharp and pointed volcanic rock formations. Residents face great danger because the entire housing structure depends completely on the durability of the volcanic ash layers that have fossilized over time. Humans have manually carved into the heart of the rocks to create multi-story interconnected apartments without using any supporting pillars at all. The open stone staircase system, sitting precariously on the steep rock faces, is the only path connecting these very strange homes together tightly. For over 700 years, this community has maintained a resilient pace of life inside the grey cliffs to avoid the harshness of nature. Agbogbloshie in the capital city of Accra in Ghana is a strange land where millions of tons of electronic waste cover the entire natural landscape. At this place, people build their lives directly on top of scrap piles up to 20 feet high, creating an artificial urban area that defies all survival laws. Every year, this area receives about 275,000 tons of global tech trash, turning the natural ground into a mixture of extremely toxic, heavy metals. Temporary houses are built using scrap wood and thin metal sheets, sitting precariously between endless ridges of electronic components. Residents accept living in an environment with lead concentrations measured at 1,000 parts per million, far exceeding the safe limits for human beings. The suffocating adaptation turns the aforementioned location into one of the most dangerous living places in the world with unrealistic terrain conditions. Phuktal Monastery clings to the cliffs of Longnak Valley in Ladakh, appearing as a dangerous hanging town attached to the rock face right above a deep river gorge. Approximately 70 monks live within the monastery, forming a small, hanging urban system suspended on the cliff between the harsh elements of nature and the mountain. The buildings are stacked vertically atop one another, creating an architectural mass that looks as if it is growing directly out of the steep and vertical stone. Situated at an elevation of 12,600 feet above sea level, the entire structure sits in a thin, cold, and extremely dry, high-altitude mountain atmosphere. From a distance, Phuktal appears as a strip of white and brown houses gripping the cliff, looking like a town suspended over a gorge with no ground. Located amidst the wild savannas of Kenya, the Maasai village is a mud defense system situated directly on the migration corridors of the world's most dangerous predators. Residents here constantly face threats from lion prides lurking around acacia thorn fences 7 feet high to protect their very precious and vital livestock. Entrances to the houses are designed narrow and winding to prevent the direct intrusion of large-sized carnivores that often wander near the village area. Local women need a mixture of cow dung and mud to create thick walls with good insulation that become hard as stone after drying. The circular structure of the entire village helps create a natural biological fortress that can completely decompose without leaving behind any harmful artificial waste or trash. The lives of the warriors here are associated with vibrant red colors from traditional clothing that helps scare away dangerous animals from a long distance. Oya sits precariously on the treacherous northern caldera cliffs at an elevation of nearly 328 feet, looking exactly like a town hanging on the edge of an ancient volcanic crater. Homes converted into hotels cling to the vertical cliff faces, creating a vertical urban system suspended in mid-air right next to a terrifying abyss. From a distance, you will see white and blue structures gripping the rock as if defying gravity, with steep precipices falling straight down into the vast and overwhelming sea below. You will face breathtakingly narrow pathways only a few feet wide, situated right at the edge of the cliff with no safety railings to prevent a fatal fall. Oya attracts millions of visitors annually, but remains a physical struggle, requiring a continuous climb through hundreds of steep stone steps carved into the cliffside. You will experience a journey through the village where every step along the narrow stairs feels like walking on a thin line between architectural beauty and a dangerous vertical drop. Dunka Monastery clings tightly to the jagged cliff edges in the Spiti region of India, creating a scene that challenges all basic laws of physics. Sitting at a towering elevation of nearly 13,000 feet, this 1,000-year-old structure looks like a fortress floating within the very treacherous air. The entire architecture is built directly on fragile limestone pillars, where one single slip would lead straight down a deep 1,000-foot abyss. Houses here are constructed from mud bricks and stone, forming an extreme residential complex situated right along the edge of a steep vertical precipice. Continuous erosion makes the foundation of this site become increasingly unstable, placing it on the list of the most endangered heritages on the planet. Humans here have adapted perfectly to the arid terrain and low oxygen levels to maintain life within these extremely precarious and high-hanging houses. Instead of resting on solid ground, Uros, floating islands between Peru and Bolivia, exist as a human-made floating layer drifting across a vast water surface. From tightly woven root layers below, the Uros stack reed stems above, forming a floating surface strong enough to support daily life and simple housing structures. The area includes about 120 floating islands, each holding only a few homes, creating a small but tightly connected community across generations. On this reed surface, houses, boats, and walkways all share the same material, making the entire living system depend directly on a single natural resource. As lower reed layers slowly decay in water, residents constantly add new layers above, maintaining stability and preventing the floating surface from weakening over time. When you step on the reed surface, the unstable feeling underfoot reveals that the entire settlement is always in slight motion, forcing continuous adaptation to its environment. Located on the Svalbard archipelago of Norway, the town of Longyearbyen is where humans establish life right in the middle of the kingdom of thousands of polar bears. Every resident is required to carry a rifle when leaving the residential boundaries to protect their lives from the massive and dangerous white predators roaming nearby. Burying the dead is strictly prohibited because the permafrost layer, 1,600 feet thick, will keep viruses and bacteria alive for a very long time. Vibrant wooden houses are built on a system of exposed pillars to prevent heat from melting the ground and causing the entire structure to collapse. Metal heat pipes running exposed on the surface of the rocky terrain look like veins trying to maintain life for the entire and lonely community. Life here is a temporary flow where no one is truly born or dies amidst the landscape of sharp mountains and the eternal polar ice. Visit Slab City, a place in the harsh Sonoran Desert of California, where people survive in the total absence of electricity, water, and all of the basic utilities. With summer temperatures reaching 120 degrees Fahrenheit, life here is a brutal challenge, where the line between freedom and heat exhaustion is always very thin. Built on the grounds of a former World War II Marine base, this site is now home to those living on the fringes amidst leftover military debris and materials. Residents live in trailers, trucks, or makeshift shacks, forming an urban landscape of reclaimed waste where everything is repurposed from abandoned items found within the desert environment. From a distance, Slab City appears as a colorful maze of graffiti art and patch structures clinging stubbornly to the vast and empty floor of the arid desert. Known as a dangerous spot due to the lack of police services, the beauty of independent freedom here sits right on the edge of violence and constant risk. Tucked away in a narrow gorge in the province of Cádiz, Setenil de las Bodegas is built directly into unstable sandstone cliffs that pose a constant threat of collapse. Massive rock overhangs serve as natural roofs for the houses below, leaving residents living under millions of tons of pressure from the ancient geological formations. The name Setenil is believed to come from the Latin phrase for 7 times nothing, referencing the many failed attempts to conquer this fortress-like town. While dwelling in these caves was originally a survival strategy against the scorching Spanish sun, it now presents a unique danger from potential structural failure. Walking through the narrow streets, you might feel a sense of claustrophobia as the heavy stone ceilings seem to press down toward the pavement. If a major rockfall were to occur, the town would be completely sealed off, as there are virtually no viable emergency evacuation routes through the gorge. Rising straight from the lush green valley of the Imereti region in Georgia, Katski Pillar is a vertical limestone monolith carrying gravity-defying architectural works on its summit. The only way to access this home in the clouds is a fragile iron ladder, 130 feet long, attached directly to the very dangerous vertical cliff. Any single wrong footstep on the small and narrow stone peak will cause a person to fall straight down a deep abyss equal to 13 stories. Blocks of stone and mortar for the ancient church were mysteriously transported to the top using primitive pulley systems from over 1,000 long years ago. On a surface area of only about 1,600 square feet, monks established an isolated living space complete with a wine cellar and small hermitage rooms. Every brick here contains the extraordinary effort of humans when building a home at the intersection between the solid ground and the vast and endless sky. Located at an elevation of over 10,000 feet in the Qinghai Basin, Emerald Lake is home to structures built on foundations of high-concentration chemical toxins. Humans here must live in metal containers that are aggressively corroded by a salt crust reaching depths of dozens of feet right beneath them. The lake water displays a vibrant green hue from lithium, a chemical capable of eroding human skin and destroying all natural life. A visibility range of 50 miles across the silent landscape causes workers to frequently lose their sense of direction and feel haunted by absolute isolation. To survive, residents must wear protective goggles constantly to combat intense ultraviolet rays reflecting off salt flats as hard as concrete. This land stands as a physical paradox by transforming a harsh industrial mining site into a wonder that challenges the limits of human existence. In the Faith Mountains of Portugal, Casa do Penedo appears as a massive stone block that challenges all concepts of modern residential architecture. This structure was formed by linking 4 monolithic granite boulders millions of years old to create a functional living space. Situated at an elevation of about 3,200 feet above sea level, this house is completely isolated and lacks any power grid system. The stone walls, measuring several feet thick, along with bulletproof glass windows, turn this place into a solid fortress against all external impacts. Right next to the main structure is an outdoor swimming pool, carved directly into the natural rock base to serve daily living needs. This strange house demonstrates the incredible adaptability of humans when building a home based on harsh natural terrain. Chinguetti, located in Mauritania, is an astonishing testament to human endurance by building homes right on the edge of the Sahara Desert. These houses are constructed entirely from dry stone, without mortar, yet remain standing against the pressure of sand dunes 165 feet high. The structure of this ancient town resembles a giant stone maze being slowly surrounded and ruthlessly swallowed by the golden sea of sand. Local people must constantly fight to protect more than 6,000 precious ancient manuscripts from the encroachment of moving sand layers. The existence of this city defies the laws of physics by maintaining heavy stone structures on unstable and sinking sand terrain. Chinguetti appears as an unreal world where the boundary between man-made architecture and the desolation of nature is almost erased. Ganvi in Benin is a bizarre town situated in the middle of Lake Nokoe, where thousands of wooden houses rise directly above the most violent water waves. The entire community of 30,000 residents faces the peril of collapse every second as all homes stand on frail wooden stilts, gripped in deep mud. Just one small mistake on a narrow dugout boat within this shaky labyrinth of stilt houses could plunge a person into the deep, dark lake waters. The foundation of these structures is built from heavy teak wood, which is the only material helping the town endure through over 400 years of history. Covering an area of nearly 1,000 acres or 500 football fields, this is a massive settlement that lacks even a single dry walking path. This system of 3,000 stilt houses, built closely together, creates an extreme survival architecture, proving the resilience of humans against the most difficult natural challenges. Mount Hua Tea House in China does not appear as a typical tea house, but hangs against a vertical cliff, where the approach itself becomes the most intense and defining part of the experience. Before reaching it, you must cross narrow wooden planks fixed into the rock, holding iron chains while keeping your body pressed tightly against the cliff for balance. This pathway is believed to be over 700 years old and still follows its original cliff-hugging design without expansion into safer modern walking routes. The entire area sits on a massive granite mountain, rising about 7,100 feet, where steep and smooth rock surfaces create a physically demanding environment for movement. Once you arrive, the tea house itself is extremely simple, with only a few resting spots, forming a clear contrast between the intense journey and the ordinary destination. Many people complete this route not for the tea, but to test how their body reacts when standing on narrow planks between a vertical rock wall and open space. In the flowing waters of Serbia, Drina River House appears as a small wooden structure fixed onto a single rock, forming an image that challenges common expectations about where buildings should exist. The structure was first built in 1968 by a group of young people, starting from simple wooden planks before gradually becoming a small cabin with defined walls and a sloped roof. Its position directly within the river means the house constantly faces moving water and rising levels, requiring repeated rebuilding efforts to maintain its presence over time. The rock beneath serves as a natural foundation, keeping the structure anchored, while the lightweight design above helps reduce pressure from the surrounding environmental forces. From a distance, the landscape consists of water stone and a single small structure, yet this simplicity creates a strong visual point that is easy to recognize. By 2019, the house had been destroyed and rebuilt 7 times, showing that its survival depends entirely on continuous human reconstruction at the same location. Gassadalur in the Faroe Islands sits perched on the edge of massive basalt cliffs where tiny houses cling right next to the deadly and deep abyss. Just one wrong step outside the porch could send a resident falling straight into the wild sea from a dangerous height of 100 feet. Powerful storms frequently strike, threatening to blow every fragile structure into the deep blue ocean that is screaming beneath the very steep and vertical cliffs. To maintain life in this treacherous place, residents must utilize every single yard of grass to graze livestock and harvest bird eggs on steep cliffs. Before the mountain tunnel appeared in 2004, the only way to reach the outside world was through narrow and steep stone steps. For centuries, humans crossed mountain peaks over 1,300 feet high to transport supplies and maintain life in this extremely harsh, isolated land. The village of Iruya, in the Andes Mountains of Argentina, clings to a rocky outcrop, jutting out between very deep abysses and vertical cliff walls. The steep and narrow cobblestone streets become a dangerous trap for anyone who slips while moving across the extremely rugged and challenging terrain. Rainy seasons often cause fierce flash floods at the mountain base, threatening to completely cut off the residents' life from the outside world. Residents build houses made of mud bricks and straw in layers along the slopes to adapt to this extremely limited and small living space. At an altitude of 9,200 feet, humans face serious oxygen shortages in every breath while living on the steep slopes. To transport food and essential goods across the narrow slopes, the local people still maintain the use of donkeys as a primary means. Rising from the Thessaly plains of Greece, Meteora is a complex of ancient monasteries perched high on the summits of very steep and vertical sandstone pillars. Traveling between these structures once depended entirely on old and frayed ropes, hanging suspended over the very deep abyss 1,300 feet down below. Any technical failure from the primitive pulley system could cause the person sitting in the net to fall freely onto the sharp cliffs. Monks spent dozens of years transporting every single stone to the tower top by human strength to build these very solid fortresses of faith. Vibrant red-tiled roofs, perched precariously on grey rock masses, create a living space completely separated from the very chaotic and loud world down below. Architecture here has stood firm for centuries as a testament to the effort of medieval humans in conquering the most dangerous terrains on Earth. Debre Damo Monastery in the Tigray region of Ethiopia stands as one of the most isolated human settlements, perched high on a massive, flat rock plateau. To reach this gravity-defying site, visitors must climb a vertical cliff about 50 feet high using only a single rope made from raw animal hide. This ancient monastery dates back to the 6th century and preserves stone and wood construction techniques that have remained intact for over 1,400 years. Sixth 1,400. The entire complex sits at an elevation of over 7,200 feet, where residents rely completely on rainwater collected in deep natural rock pits. (7,200) strict rules define daily life as women, and even female animals, are not allowed to enter the isolated summit under any circumstance. Suspended on a steep mountainside in Italy, Bivacco Gervasuti appears as a metal capsule isolated between rock and ice, where humans place a shelter directly onto a vertical terrain. The structure uses a modular design with a lightweight metal shell, reducing weight while withstanding strong wind pressure and long-lasting harsh environmental conditions. Located at about 9,300 feet, this bivouac can hold up to 12 people, showing that it serves as a survival shelter rather than a comfort-based stay. The interior is arranged into compact functional zones, including sleeping, eating, and storage, maximizing the use of a space of about 300 square feet. The entire unit was installed by helicopter with minimal on-site construction, reducing environmental impact and allowing removal without leaving permanent traces on the terrain. It is also a cultural landmark for Italian mountaineering because the structure is named after Giusto Gervasuti, a highly influential climber, giving the bivouac both survival and memorial significance. Explore Shibam, a city in Yemen, with high-rise mud buildings perched dangerously close to the flash flood edges of the Wadi Hadramaut Valley. Built on a narrow plateau, this ancient city constantly faces the thin line between stability and the risk of complete isolation when floodwaters rise. The unique mud structures, reaching 5 to 11 stories high, form a vertical system where any erosion at the base could lead to a catastrophic collapse. Constructed only from mud bricks and wood without steel, these structures remain in a fragile state, vulnerable to severe damage after every heavy rainstorm. With a population of about 7,000 people, life here is a high-risk survival effort where residents must constantly reinforce their homes against the harsh environment. In Spain, Casas Colgadas appears as structures attached to a steep cliff where wooden balconies extend outward into open space, creating the impression that the buildings move beyond stable ground. When you look closely, the main structure remains anchored to rock, while the outer balconies project forward, forming a clear contrast between the core support and extended sections. This design originated in the medieval period, when limited space required expansion outward over the cliff rather than building across flat ground. Today, only a few original buildings remain, with the most recognizable group preserving long wooden balconies that clearly define the hanging house structure. The buildings combine stone and wood, where stone provides primary support and wood extends spatial depth, allowing the structure to maintain balance along steep terrain. Casas Colgadas was listed among 100 candidates in the 12 Treasures of Spain selection in 2007, showing its strong public recognition. The Hanging Temple in China clings directly to a vertical cliff, like a structure suspended in midair, making you immediately question how it can exist in such a position. The structure rises about 250 feet above the ground, with wooden floors and corridors supported by beams driven deep into the rock instead of traditional foundations. Once inside, you notice the extremely tight space, where narrow walkways allow only one person to pass and create a clear sense of imbalance. The entire layout is set into a recessed section of the cliff, reducing direct impact from rain and wind while slowing long-term natural erosion. Inside, about 80 statues from different belief systems are arranged within a compact structure connected by suspended exterior corridors. From below, the thin wooden columns barely touch the ground, making the entire complex appear to float and creating a powerful visual illusion of defying gravity. Hidden in the mountainous west of Dagestan in Russia, the Tlyaratinsky district appears as a deeply cut terrain where steep slopes and valleys create a strong sense of isolation. The landscape formed through the uplift of the Caucasus Mountains combined with long-term erosion, which divided rock layers into steep ridges and deep cuts. You will notice that the ground does not spread widely, but instead rises and falls in layers, creating a complex structure that limits easy movement. The slopes alternate between exposed rock and low vegetation, showing differences in material strength and how well soil can remain in place across the terrain. The district covers about 240 square miles, where many small water flows divide the land and make connections across areas difficult over long periods. The area is almost untouched by urban development, so the landscape remains clearly natural, with very limited human traces compared to the surrounding terrain scale. In China, Huangxian Valley does not appear as a typical valley, but rather like a massive rock section where structures hang along steep walls, creating a strong sense of vertical space. As you move deeper inside, the entire environment extends upward, with layers of buildings and pathways attached to rock surfaces, forming a clearly structured vertical system. Exposed rock faces retain rough-cut marks from past extraction, forming a clear geological base that allows you to observe how layers of stone define the environment. Across this foundation, an area of about 6 square kilometers is organized into bridges, paths, and clusters of hanging structures that create a continuous movement route. This combination of natural terrain and suspended architecture has attracted more than 1 million visitors in a short time, as the experience depends on how you observe layered space. Huangxian Valley was built from a former quarry, where original cliffs and slopes were preserved and used as the base for all current structures. Located 34 miles off the North Carolina coast, Frying Pan Tower is a rusting iron block standing alone amidst the ocean, facing fierce storms. Four massive steel pilings are driven deep into the sea floor, supporting thousands of tons of structure, hovering directly above many predatory sharks hunting below. Beneath the floors are constant vibrations, challenging every law of physics, as humans live within a precarious space of absolute and terrifying watery isolation. This tower was once an old lighthouse station, now becoming a home completely separated from the mainland with no paths or any green trees. The unique metal structure is designed to bend with the wave's momentum, helping the building withstand the most brutal and violent destruction from nature. Without leaving Earth, you can encounter an edge of the world at the Yamal Peninsula in Russia, where land stretches into the Arctic Ocean like a living frozen extension. On this permafrost foundation, layers of ice preserve landforms over time, yet gradually reshape the surface as environmental conditions shift through natural cycles. From this process, shallow lakes and wet ground spread widely, forming a pattern where water and soft land interweave across a horizon that seems continuous. Vegetation remains limited to moss and lichen close to the ground, clearly reflecting environmental constraints that restrict the growth of larger plant forms. The peninsula stretches about 400 miles, while reindeer migration routes can reach nearly 800 miles, showing continuous ecological movement across this region. When examined more closely, the surface behaves like a dynamic system where frozen layers maintain structure, while water and soil continuously reorganize over time. In remote Ethiopia, the Abuna Yamatagu Church exists as a grim challenge perched precariously on a sheer cliff high above the ground. To access this structure, you must climb 650 feet by hand without any protective equipment. Small rock hollows worn down over 1,500 years are the only grip points helping people scale the vertical cliff. A narrow ledge measuring only 20 inches wide sits next to an 800-foot deep abyss as the final gateway. The entire interior space was meticulously carved from a single massive sandstone block to preserve precious ancient murals. This strange sight proves the extraordinary adaptability of humans when building dwellings in locations that defy all laws of physics. Fanjingshan stands 8,432 feet high, with famous structures located near the summit where powerful winds, dense mist, and very narrow rock faces dominate the extremely challenging and rugged landscape. UNESCO describes Fanjingshan as a metamorphic rock island within a karst region, meaning this massive stone block stands out prominently and distinctly from all the surrounding natural geological terrain. This area also holds great religious significance as it is considered the Bodhimanda of Maitreya Buddha, a sacred land closely associated with the spiritual path of enlightenment. Being a high mountain area, there are strong winds and slippery rock surfaces, making the crossing of bridges and stairs much riskier than any ordinary or typical tourist site. You will face an additional 65-minute hike to reach the summit after the main climb, a real-life experience that lasts much longer than you might originally expect. The bridge connecting the two peaks is extremely narrow, providing only enough space for one single person to move through the deep and dangerous rock crevice below. Located 222 miles south of Tokyo, the volcanic island of Aogashima is a geological wonder that challenges every rule of human survival. The unique structure of this island features a massive crater surrounding a smaller volcano situated directly inside the center. Residents here build their homes. And live directly on top of the active magma chambers within a caldera that remains on the active list. Steep cliffs rising up to 1,300 feet encircle the entire island, eliminating any possible access by land or natural beaches. Transporting all construction materials and daily necessities must be performed using crane systems from a pier located against the dangerous cliffs. The existence of a human community inside this volcano is the clearest evidence of the ability to adapt to extreme terrains. The Bonifacio cliff houses on the island of Corsica in France are an ancient architectural complex perched precariously atop a white limestone cliff over 230 feet high. These multi-story buildings are constructed so close to the edge of the abyss that the stone foundations below have been significantly eroded by sea waves. Natural erosion over thousands of years has created giant undercuts, making the entire town appear as if it is floating in the vast mid-air. On a narrow strip of land, only about 330 feet wide, humans designed tall and cramped buildings to optimize extreme survival space. To obtain fresh water, ancient residents even had to bore through the vertical cliff to create a system of 187 steps sloped at 45 degrees. This unique geological structure transforms the entire residential area into a natural fortress that defies all laws of gravity and physics. Castellfollit de la Roca in Spain is a rare geological marvel where the entire village sits perfectly on a super narrow basalt strip. Stretching about 0.6 miles, this landmark looks like a giant stone blade thrusting directly into the deep and rugged valley. Ancient houses here are built right on the edge of a vertical cliff, reaching a height of 165 feet above the ground. The sturdy foundation of this community is actually the result of two volcanic lava flows stacked on each other hundreds of thousands of years ago. Natural river erosion has carved the cliff into a straight wall that makes the living space extremely challenging. This unusual terrain forced humans to adapt and create one of the most gravity-defying residential areas in the world. Perched defiantly within the Vilcabamba mountain range of Peru, Choqquequirao emerges as an impossible marvel situated over 10,000 feet above sea level. To construct homes on cliffs sloping up to 70 degrees, the Inca manually transported granite blocks weighing thousands of pounds. The residential structures here utilize a mortarless stonework technique so precise that even a single banknote cannot fit through the gaps. Stone walls designed with a slight inward tilt help the entire complex remain stable against earthquakes and treacherous terrain. The unique system of 24 white stone inlaid terraces demonstrates architectural planning capabilities that push far beyond physical limits. Currently, more than 60% of the area remains covered by dense jungle, hiding mysteries of how humans survived amidst the abyss. Located in the remote South Australian desert, Kubapedi is where thousands of people survive, inside massive man-made stone caves. To escape the harsh surface, residents have carved into the sandstone to create homes reaching depths of 23 feet. This entire strange town was formed through opal mining, accounting for over 70% of the total opal production worldwide. These windowless homes completely defy standard architectural rules as humans live and work entirely in the dark. The existence of the largest underground residential area on the planet proves the extreme adaptability of humans to the terrain. Every square meter of land here can hide million-dollar treasures or abandoned mine shafts that are extremely dangerous for anyone. No one would expect a massive structure like Dar al-Hajar in Yemen to stand firmly on top of a sharp limestone pillar rising from the ground. This palace rises above a natural rock column over 65 feet high, making the entire 5-story structure appear as if it is floating in the air. Ancient builders carved directly into the solid rock to form strong interior rooms without using any modern machines or advanced construction tools. The most intense detail is how thousands of tons of mud bricks and stone balance on a very small surface at the top of the narrow pillar. A deep well stretching dozens of feet was drilled through the center of the rock to bring underground water up to the isolated palace above. This unlikely structure has turned Dar al-Hajjar into a powerful symbol of how humans adapt to extreme and dangerous landscapes. Elidey Island in Iceland has long been a visual obsession due to a single white house perched lonely among steep cliffs. Spanning about 110 acres, this landmark causes amazement with its extreme sloping ground and a seamless carpet of green grass. To reach this structure, people must jump from a boat onto slippery rock faces and climb a rope at a height of 400 feet. The loneliest house in the world has no electricity or indoor plumbing, but still maintains a sauna powered by natural rainwater. The town of Grindavik, located on the southern Reykjanes Peninsula of Iceland, is a place where the ground tears itself apart due to magma below. Massive fissures run directly through residential neighborhoods, ready to swallow the sturdiest buildings as the crust of the earth constantly fractures and breaks apart. More than 20,000 earthquakes occurring in 1 month keep the homes here in a state of violent shaking and potential for total collapse. To protect life, people have built stone walls 80 feet high, equal to an 8-story building, to stop the relentless attack of molten lava. Beneath the silent streets is a 9-mile-long river of fire flowing rapidly, turning the human living space into a raw geological battlefield. Every rooftop in Grindavik today is a symbol of resilience, as it exists on the fragile boundary between complete destruction and a new beginning. Isolated on the eastern coast of Greenland, the town of Ittoqqortoormiit is where humans survive amidst the dangerous encirclement of many giant and wild white predators. Doors here are never locked to ensure that anyone can quickly escape when facing the sudden and deadly pursuit of hungry and massive polar bears. This land is completely cut off from the outside world for 9 months every year when the ocean freezes solid, making ships unable to reach. Each wooden house is painted in vibrant colors, acting as tiny bright spots contrasting sharply with the vast monochrome of the ancient and eternal ice. Residents drive iron pillars deep into the permafrost layer to keep the entire house structure from tilting or collapsing suddenly due to ground shifting. Life here is a strange intersection between modern conveniences and ancient hunting practices to maintain a breath of existence amidst the absolute and silent solitude. The city of La Rinconada, perched precariously in the Andes Mountains of Peru, is where humans cling to life right next to a massive melting glacier. The ground here constantly shifts due to the movement of the ice block underneath, causing the temporary rows of houses to collapse at any time. At an altitude of 17,000 feet, oxygen levels are only half of the normal amount, making every daily activity a heavy burden for the body. Thousands of thin tin roofs are built close together along the steep slopes, creating a chaotic urban area, clinging tightly to the grey cliff walls. Water boils at only 176 degrees, making cooking food difficult and completely changing the eating habits of the local people here. Miners here accept working without pay for 30 days to exchange for a chance of luck, finding gold on their final working day of the month. The Magician Grottos in Gansu Province, China, sit precariously on the terrifying vertical cliff of a mountain shaped like a massive and giant pile of straw. The fragile wooden walkway system clinging to the vertical cliff is the only path connecting those houses, suspended between the deep and very dark abysses. Any fracture of the decaying wooden beams could cause the entire path and travelers to fall from a height of 260 feet. Humans carved 194 hollow chambers directly into the red sandstone to create living and worship spaces throughout many thousands of years. Giant clay statues carved directly into the flat rock face create a very strange apartment complex for the gods located high in the empty air. Matmata village, located deep within the desert of Tunisia, is where humans choose to hide themselves inside those deep craters amidst the barren and bald hills. Residents must face dangers from sudden mud floods that can pour down into the pits and bury all the living rooms beneath the heavy sludge. The house structure is dug 23 feet into the erodible sandy soil, making family safety depend on the stability of those vertical earth walls. Each home here is created by digging a giant circular courtyard, then carving bedrooms directly into the parched and dry ground to create living spaces. For 1,000 years, the Berber community has maintained a mysterious pace of life inside these caves that have no windows looking to the outside. Mount Merapi stands 9,738 feet high and is located 17 miles north of Yogyakarta, appearing as a massive fire shield situated close to populated areas. You will see a survival paradox, where the greater the danger, the more people move closer to the eruption zones to farm on the fertile volcanic soil. It is the most active volcano in Indonesia, with over 60 recorded eruptions since 1548, constantly harboring a terrifying and destructive power deep within the earth. International visits from the UN and UNESCO emphasize the harmony between nature and family survival, highlighting a point where life exists on the edge of volcanic disaster. Paro Takzang sits precariously on a steep cliff face at an elevation of 10,236 feet, looking straight down at a valley floor 3,000 feet below. The temples grip the granite walls of the Himalayas, appearing like a hanging house system, attached to a narrow and fragile rock ledge. You will see stone steps carved directly into the vertical cliff, forming a hanging staircase that connects the different temple levels along the rock face. From a distance, the white and orange structures appear as a strip clinging to the mountain, looking like a town suspended above the abyss, amidst clouds and heavy winds. Popatong Kalat rises from the plug of an ancient extinct volcano at an elevation of 2,418 feet, appearing as a dangerous hanging town. The temple complex is built around the steep rocky summit, creating a spiritual hanging urban space that is completely separated from the world below. From the foot of the vertical cliff, shimmering golden roofs appear precariously, creating a powerful impression of a structure suspended in mid-air. Reaching the summit requires you to conquer 777 narrow stone steps, a pathway that feels like a sky ladder hanging against the mountain. Although you can see the entire Bagan region from the top, the extreme height causes a loss of balance and an intense fear of the abyss. With its unique position, this site has become a major pilgrimage destination, attracting millions to witness the magnificent hanging temple amidst the clouds. Refuge des Cosmiques sits precariously on the steep cliffs of Aiguille du Midi at an elevation of 11,854 feet in the French Alps. The structure clings to vertical ice and rock faces, creating a hanging shelter system suspended between the frozen terrain and the open mountain sky. From a distance, the white and grey hut appears gripped to the cliffside, looking like a small vessel hanging amidst the vast and jagged mountain landscape. With temperatures frequently dropping below 32 degrees Fahrenheit, the icy surfaces remain permanently slippery, increasing the fatal risk of sliding off the cliff edge. To reach the hut, you must navigate metal bridges and steep snow ridges, where every narrow step requires perfect balance to avoid a dangerous fall. Travel journals often rank this site as one of the most dangerous hanging lodges due to its extreme vertical position and unpredictable alpine weather conditions. This is Ronda, a town situated on a rugged limestone plateau in Andalusia, appearing as a massive hanging structure perched right at the edge of steep and daunting cliffs. The El Tahoe Gorge drops more than 328 feet, splitting the town in two and creating a hanging space between the vertical rock walls. The town features one of the oldest bull rings in Spain, where spectators and matadors face intense matches located very close to the sheer mountain abyss. Standing on the cliff, looking down at the Guadalquivir River, makes visitors feel as if they are suspended on the sky's edge with a constant fear. To reach this remote hanging urban center, you must travel 62 miles along steep mountain roads, connecting from the coastal city of Malaga. Once a strategic military hub, Ronda utilized its cliffs as a natural defensive shield that also serves as a permanent and dangerous vertical drop. This is Rocinha, a town clinging to the steep hillsides of Rio de Janeiro, a dangerous hanging maze situated between wealth and extreme poverty. Due to the steep terrain and unstable soil, the entire settlement faces a constant and terrifying risk of landslides following heavy and prolonged tropical rains. As the largest favela in Brazil, it forms an extreme hanging urban system where houses are stacked vertically atop one another in a very confined space. The massive population density forces informal structures to rise in endless layers, increasing the fatal risk of collapse due to overloaded and weak foundations. Scenes of waste and pollution flowing along the slopes create a grim cycle where human life is suspended between environmental decay and the steep abyss. The diverse colors of the brick walls reflect a history of individual construction, giving a unique and inconsistent look to this massive hanging architectural complex. Explore San Juan de Gaztelu-Gatse, a steep rocky island in the Bay of Biscay, a dangerous hanging town situated in isolation amidst the powerful crashing waves. The island is connected to the mainland by a winding stone bridge, creating a hanging pathway that leads across vertical cliffs and through the howling sea winds. From a distance, the architectural complex appears as a cluster of red structures gripped to the grey cliffside, forming a hanging town suspended between rock and tide. The staircase system is built in a zigzag pattern, perfectly adapting to the natural steepness and the unique shapes of the ancient and jagged rock formations. As you climb to the summit, you feel as if you are entering the border between sky and sea, a journey requiring great courage against the edge. Located approximately 22 miles from Bilbao, visitors must complete a journey on foot along the cliffs and the stone bridge to reach this hanging sanctuary. Visit Sassi di Matadera, an ancient architectural complex carved directly into the limestone cliffs of southern Italy, appearing as a primitive hanging town perched at 1,300 feet. The soft calcarenite cliffs feature steep slopes of up to 50 degrees, facing constant erosion and cracking, creating a fragile and precarious hanging structure. These cave dwellings have been inhabited for over 7,000 years, demonstrating human resilience in living deep within cliffs right at the edge of the abyss. The Gravina Valley below is a sheer canyon without railings, where any misstep from the Sassi cliffs could lead to a dangerous and fatal fall. Carved into the rock since the Paleolithic era, these cave homes form a unique, hanging urban landscape situated dangerously close to the point of collapse. The pathways and staircases are sometimes only a few inches wide, serving as hanging trails between the sky and the deep, rocky ground below. Siwa Oasis is located deep in Egypt's western desert, more than 30 miles from the Mediterranean Sea, yet completely isolated by a sea of sand. With a foundation containing salt lakes and alum water, the structures here constantly face the risk of erosion and weakening from beneath the ground. The historic heavy rains of 1926 caused the walls and foundations of Shali to collapse, turning it into a hanging town of broken ruins. Today, deep cracks and fractured walls remain throughout Shali, creating a precarious site where any wall could collapse at any moment. The failure of these structures and the ongoing safety risks forced residents to abandon the old center, leaving behind a hanging town of shadows in the harsh desert. From above, Siwa appears as a green strip of palms standing out against the golden sand, a vibrant hanging point located dangerously close to the edge of the void. This is the Saint-Michel d'Aiguille Chapel in France, a unique architectural feat perched precariously on top of an 85-meter volcanic plug in the Haute-Loire region. The path to the chapel clings to the steep rock face, creating a walkway right at the edge of the abyss, where every step faces heights and strong winds. Located on the massive central plateau, this area frequently deals with thick fog and rain, making the stone steps slippery and increasing the overall risk of falling. Since the 12th century, the chapel has been expanded with complex structures, standing like a spiritual fortress suspended right at the edge of a dangerous vertical drop. With 268 steep stone steps carved directly into the mountain, this is the only path that challenges the courage of visitors as they move upward. Climbing these ancient stone stairs is a survival experience within nature, where people must move carefully against the fragile boundary of the steep volcanic rock face. This is Stocksness, a headland jutting into the North Atlantic, marking a dramatic and volatile intersection between the Icelandic mainland and the vast, freezing ocean. The surrounding black volcanic sands hide the constant threat of rogue waves and frigid waters that can easily sweep you away without warning. You must pay an entry fee to the private landowners to access the area and witness the magnificent cliffs overlooking the treacherous sea. To ensure your safety, you must stay on the marked trails, as wandering off the path could lead directly into dangerous sinkholes or over the edge of hidden slopes. Standing 454 meters high, the Vestrahorn mountain forms jagged vertical cliffs that loom directly over the edge of a massive drop. The landscape stands out with a mesmerizing contrast between the black sand, the deep ocean water, and the dark, towering Rocky Mountains. Located in southwestern Algeria, Taghit appears as a sharp boundary where the dry Sahara meets a green oasis sustained by hidden underground water sources. Massive sand dunes rising hundreds of feet constantly shift with the wind, creating a changing surface that prevents accurate prediction of terrain shapes over time. Inside the dry zone, more than 137,000 palm trees form a stable ecosystem, showing that life depends directly on underground water flow and geology. Rock surfaces nearby contain ancient carvings of large animals, like elephants and giraffes, proving the region once had a wetter climate and richer biodiversity than today. The old settlement built from compacted earth uses thick enclosed structures to reduce sand impact and maintain stable living conditions in a harsh desert environment. You can move from completely dry sand into dense vegetation within a few steps, creating a rapid landscape shift rarely experienced in other desert regions. In the South Atlantic Ocean, Tristan da Cunha of the United Kingdom rises as an isolated volcanic island more than 1,500 miles from the nearest land, where people live in near total separation. From a distance, Tristan da Cunha appears as a massive volcanic cone rising directly from the ocean, with steep slopes that make most of the island look closed and difficult to access. The island formed through volcanic activity, with steep slopes and multiple small cones, showing a complex and ongoing geological development over long periods. Most of the coastline consists of steep cliffs, making large areas inaccessible and creating a landscape that is naturally enclosed and restricted by its own terrain. The highest peak reaches about 6,800 feet, and the island covers around 40 square miles, limiting human settlement to a narrow, usable zone. Tristan da Cunha is often described as the most remote, permanently inhabited place on Earth, and that reputation is based on real geographic distance rather than simple tourism description. In Georgia, the Uplistsikhe cave city spreads across a massive rock formation where ancient people carved living and ritual spaces directly into the natural landscape. The entire system includes hundreds of rooms, passages, and steps carved into a single rock mass, showing precise control over shape and structural design. The site was formed in relatively soft sandstone, allowing easier carving while also making the surface more vulnerable to long-term erosion. The complex covers about 20 acres and contains multiple functional spaces, proving it once operated as a complete settlement rather than scattered caves. A tunnel, about 10 feet below ground, was used to transport water, demonstrating that residents developed infrastructure alongside carved living spaces. Inside several chambers, the ceilings were shaped into curved forms and carved patterns, reflecting how builders reproduced constructed architecture within solid rock. Rather than a city built outward, Vardzia Cave City in Georgia appears like the interior of a mountain opened wide, where an entire living space remained hidden inside rock for centuries. Across this exposed surface, layered spaces extend about 1,600 feet and stack into 19 levels, making the mountain function as a pre-organized multi-level structure within. This multi-level organization forces movement through narrow tunnels, carved stairs, and tight passages where each step requires balance and constant awareness of the surrounding stone. To create such a system, builders carved directly into volcanic tuff, a material that allows large spaces to be formed while maintaining long-term structural stability. Within this rock mass, about 500 caves once connected living areas, communal spaces, and a water system extending roughly 2 miles, forming a complete enclosed settlement. When every function from living to storage and movement is integrated within a single rock mass, the site demonstrates how terrain itself can be transformed into a fully contained human system. Within the mountainous terrain of Indonesia, Wairabo appears as a closed circular structure where pointed roofs gather into a spatial form rarely seen in traditional human settlements. Here, traditional construction techniques use tightly joined wooden frames and thick thatch layers, allowing the entire structure to remain stable in long-lasting, humid mountain conditions. The village sits at about 3,900 feet above sea level, making living conditions, farming practices, and access clearly different from lower regions within the same country. Inside each structure, a 6-level vertical design organizes space efficiently, separating areas for daily living storage and preservation of essential supplies within one enclosed building. All 7 houses are arranged in a complete circular formation, forming a central open space where shared activities take place and maintain strong community connection. This layout not only optimizes limited land use, but also creates a centralized system where all living and storage functions are linked through a shared spatial core. There is a city in China that does not spread in all directions but is compressed into a long strip along a river, where daily life exists within an unusually narrow space. From above, Yanjin appears as a thin line, stretching between steep mountains, making the urban layout resemble a corridor rather than a typical complete city. The valley was carved by a river, cutting through mountains over long periods, leaving only a narrow, flat area that forced people to build within strict natural limits. Within this confined land, many buildings stand close to the water or are raised on supports, showing how living space adapts vertically instead of expanding outward. At its widest section of about 1,000 feet, roads, houses, and urban activity still share the same corridor, creating a clearly compressed spatial arrangement.